In the second half of the 23rd century BC, the ruler in power of the crippling Akkadian Empire was Shar-Kali-Shari. Yeah, that's a real name. It means King of Kings. He was son of Naram-Sin and made the last efforts in putting down rebellions all over the domain, but mostly in summer. And it really doesn't help that the Akkadians were constantly attacked by the Elamites, the Guteans, the people of Martu, the people of Marhashi, the Americans. Wait, not that last one, but they probably would if they were around back then. The Akkadian rulers had the habit of forcing their priests to immortalize them as deities, which was absolutely not popular within the religious portion of the population, which was the overwhelming majority of it. After 2200 BC, both the Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilizations were hit by a devastating drought, and in the last years of Shar-Kali-Shari's reign, he only had power over Akkad, Babylon, and most of Sumer. Some minor Akkadian rulers followed him as the land fell into anarchy, the main one being King Dudu. Yeah, that's also a real name. The last Akkadian king will be Shu-Turul from 2168 BC, when the Gutean people from the Zagros Mountains in the northeast attacked. Shu-Turul made one last stand against the invaders, but Akkad and Babylon were sacked and burned. After he was likely unalived in 2154 BC, Sumerian dynasties in Uruk and Ur followed him, with kings like, ooh, you're gonna love these names, Ur-Nigin, Ur-Gigir, Kuda, Pusurili, Posole, and Ur-Utu, but they all seem to have fallen under the control of a new Gutean dynasty in Mesopotamia. We don't know much about these Gutean people, or even where their homeland was located. They might have been of Central Asian descent, or autochthonous non-Semitic Mesopotamians like the Sumerians probably were. Each one of them referred to himself as the king of the four quarters of the world, which means emperor of the universe, probably inspired by one of the titles that Sargon of Akkad took. The names of some of their kings were Nibia, Ingishu, Ikukumlakaba, and Silulumesh. I mean, I'm not complaining about these names. It's logical that they sound wildly different. Imagine learning about ancient history, like about the Egyptians or something like that, and all of a sudden some John Smith shows up. That'll be even weirder. What we do know about the Guteans is that they were feared and established a certain degree of tyranny over the Sumerian cities, although they didn't control them directly, only sending troops to collect high taxes, implied by the prosperity of the Sumerian leader Gudea of Lagash after 2144 BC. He was a religious and humble man, adopting the title of Ensi, which means something similar to priest, instead of En or Lugal, meaning king, which he actually was. He was described as kind and extremely capable as a leader, allowing the people of Lagash to live a decent life even under the Gutean rule. His faith was towards the god Ningirsu, patron god of Lagash. Gudea statues are the oldest surviving human representations with very detailed faces. Therefore, he is the best example of what the Sumerian ethnic group looked like before him. Yep, this is what Gilgamesh would have looked like in real life. Following the end of the peaceful rule of Gudea in 2122 BC, a Sumerian lord, probably from Uruk, would promise in front of the gods that he would end the tyranny of the Guteans. His name was Utu-Hegal, who liberated some Sumerian cities one by one, having his son-in-law fighting by his side and becoming the governor of Ur. It was said that Enlil himself had sent Utu-Hegal, the king of the four quarters of the world, to end the enemy rule. The Gutean king at the time was Tirigan, and the campaign is described in a tablet. In that place, Gutium gathered his forces and sent forth the troops against Utu-Hegal, but the Sumerians, as mighty as they were, conquered them. King Tirigan fled all by himself towards Gutium. He took refuge in Dubrum, protected by his people, but once they knew that Utu-Hegal was marching towards the city, he was given to the Sumerian envoy. Tirigan was blindfolded and brought before Utu-Hegal, who, planting his foot upon his neck on the ground, returned the kingship to Soma. The Sumerians returned to Uruk, ending the Gudean tyranny. The king started the 5th dynasty of Uruk, officially giving birth to the Neo-Sumerian Empire a few years before 2112 BC, the year in which, unfortunately, Utu-Hegal suffered an accident while inspecting one of the city's canals. The kingship was passed to his son-in-law, the man who had married his daughter. His name was Ur Nammu, who would start the 3rd dynasty of Ur. He chose to walk the same path as Gudea, referring to himself as a mere servant of the gods and not wanting to be deified, generating a popularity that not even the mighty emperors of Akkad could brag of, thus avoiding the same trips and falls they went through. This man bears the honor of making the earliest surviving code of laws in history, a supposed code of laws made by King Urukagina a few centuries prior has been mentioned, but it is yet to be proved it existed, so the one of Ur Nammu is the first as far as we know. Fines, divorces, auctions, it all started here, baby. Here are some examples. If a man unalives a person, he shall be unalive. If a man commits a robbery, he shall be unalive. If a man kidnaps someone, he shall be imprisoned and pay 15 shekels of silver. And there are some more in the screen. Needless to say, Sumerian became the language of the government again, with Akkadian still used alongside it within the people of the empire. Besides, the cities of Sumer and Akkad stopped being city-states united by religion and became cities whose governor, as an NC priest, answered directly to the kings at Ur. Around 2100 BC, Ur Nammu will be the one to commission the construction of the most iconic Sumerian building of all time, the ziggurats of Ur, dedicated to the moon god Nana, also called Sin. It was buried under dirt and sand for thousands of years, until it was partially restored in the 1980s under the rule of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Research in the ziggurat has been a little difficult in the last few decades. The reason? Well, they were playing Battlefield in real life around here, which, in case it needs to be said, ain't a good thing for the people there, for archaeology, or even for the ziggurat itself, since there are multiple bullet holes on the building and bomb craters very close to it, all originated during the Gulf War of 1991. But despite all that, the Sumerian wonder can be visited and even climbed for free in relative safety. I mean, hopefully some air bombardments won't destroy it in the near future, but maybe try seeing it while you still can. It's 64 by 45 meters wide and 30 meters high to this day, although it was higher than that when it had the temple levels on top. And all of my respects go to this ziggurat. Literally the hardest building ever built by mankind after the pyramids. A daughter of Ur Nammu was appointed as a high priestess of Nana in there. Her name was Enirgal Anna, and the king was said to meet his end in battle while fighting against the Gutian insurrection. 4 of his descendants will rule after him. Most of their names are low-key cool: Amarsin, Chusin, and Ibisin, except for Ur Nammu's son, whose name is Shulgi. He will make campaigns to expand the empire, integrating the capital Elamite cities of Susa and Anshan into the Neo-Sumerian domain, and going as far as getting the land of Marhashi, getting close to the size of Sargon's empire. But he made a tiny mistake. After ruling for 54 years of popularity within most of his people, he decided to get deified and put himself as superior to all of his people, being no different from the arrogant Akkadian emperors before him. So yeah, more than a few revolts happened. Sumerians, Akkadians, Guteans, Elamites, Americans, absolutely no one like that. His three descendants, the ones with the cool names, will solve this issue by deifying themselves as well. Oh wait, check the calendar, it's the 2010s BC and the empire is falling apart. I wonder why. And if it wasn't enough, the Amorites also entered the battle. These people had already settled right next to the Sumerians, with the latter making a border to keep them out and viewing them as uncivilized. But it wasn't enough. The Amorites invaded some Sumerian cities in the north and established their own government in there, adopting Sumerian customs. The last nail in the coffin will be an Elamite invasion to Ur in 2004 BC, taking the last king, Ibbi-Sin, as a prisoner and most likely ending the Sumerian dynasty with his execution. The failure of Charkalishari, Chulgi, and many others was already predicted in Sargon's own words. If someone were to rule after me, may he be capable of ruling over the black-haired people. I've heard someone say that this period was a brief Sumerian Renaissance, and I love the sound of the last two words, but brief. 108 years, my man. That is way longer than the mother freaking Soviet Union freaking lasted. What do you mean we're brief? The Amorites will take control over the plethora of Mesopotamian cultures, with all of them slowly accepting the new rule and working day in and day out alongside the people that they used to hate, as they built the foundations of what will later be the Babylonian Empire. But that will be the topic for another episode. That's it. Now you know that the Neo-Sumerian Empire rise to power in 2112 BC, fell in 2004 BC, that the ziggurat of Ur is the coolest building ever, and that being a little bit of a nice ruler to your people might be a good idea. Ciao!